Absalom, whom we anointed over us, has died in battle. Now, therefore, why do you not say anything about bringing back the king? Ugh, this is just kind of one of those things where I shake my head and say, what? How is your loyalty? This shows no loyalty in this. They're saying, hey, before, early on, King David was, really good. He helped us against the Philistines, and he was a mighty warrior and all of that sort of stuff. But then he fled because of Absalom. So then we liked Absalom. Absalom was the man. But then Absalom died. And so now, why is no one talking about bringing the king back again? It just seems like there's just so little loyalty. It's about whoever is best at the moment, for whom it is that can do the most for us. There doesn't seem to be a lot of caring about David or the fact that he was God's anointed or any of those other things. None of that is showing in all of this, which maybe, keep this in mind, maybe why at the end of this chapter we start seeing things fray apart. It's going to set the tone for a future thing.
And there's no big deal made about Absalom. He just died.
He died in battle. You know, we liked him.
Yeah.
We did like him for a while, and the king, had to flee. He died, and so now we need to have the king back. And so in verse 11 it says, so King David sent to Zadok and Abiathar the priests and said, hey, go speak to the elders of Judah, saying, why are you the last to bring the king back to his house, since the words of all Israel have come to the king to his very house? So he's gone to Judah, the tribe that David's from. This is his people. Okay, he's from Judah. And he's saying, how come you're not out there? Why are you the last ones to be calling for me to come back? You should be the first out there speaking for it. He says in 12, you are my brethren. You are my bone and my flesh. Why then are you the last to bring back the king? All right. So then he goes to verse 13, and it says, and say to Amasa, are you not my bone and my flesh? God do so to me and more also, if you are not commander of the army before me continually in the place of Joab. Last week someone asked me, do you think that King David knows the story of Joab and what he did to Absalom? And I said, Scripture doesn't tell us in detail. I kind of think he does. I kind of think maybe he's heard the story of what's going on with there. Although Joab is not completely out of the picture. He's going to come back. But so he tells the tribe of Judah, you are my people. But then he goes to Amasa and he says, you are my flesh and my bone. We read back in chapter 17, who is Amasa to David? Anybody remember?
He's the head of the army.
He was the head of Absalom's army, but there was a kin connection.
Isn't he Zeruiah's?
He's a nephew.
He's a nephew of David. He is another nephew of David, cousin to all those other nephews, Abiathar and, not Abiathar, Joab and his brother, how come I can't say his name? The two sons of Zeruiah, and he also was Absalom's cousin, and so they're all united there. So he tells Amasa, I'm going to kick Joab out and I'm going to bring you in. Stop and think about that for just a minute. Why would you take the enemy's commander in your most important position?
Get that army to be loyal to you now.
Good. And so he comes from the tribe of Judah. If you're trying to influence the tribe to take you back, it's good to bring one of the people, right? And to sort of solidify the ones who had been against you with the ones who are for you. Do you think it shows loyalty on David's part to Joab?
No.
So there's a lot of more or less political maneuvering here, isn't there? Do you see it? This sort of whoever's best to...
At the moment.
It's kind of like when when whoever's running for president picks a vice president. Oftentimes it's not the person they like the most. It's the one who will get more votes for them. That's sort of the way it works. Is there political maneuvering of, hey, I'm weak in this one area, I think you could get that vote, I'll pick you as my number two. It sort of has that flavor and feel of whoever's best for the moment to bring me back into the kingdom, to return me. That's who I'm going to put in there.
Trying to pull the tribes back.
He's trying to pull everything back and smooth things over with Amasa. And when he says before me continually, that is simply a way of saying for life. You're going to always be in this position continually. When they use this term, you'll be before me continually, it's an ongoing thing there. And so he swayed the hearts of all of the men of Judah, just as the heart of one man. So they sent this word to the king, return you and all of your servants. So when it says he swayed, who are they talking about? Who's the he?
David.
When Amasa swayed the hearts of all of the people of Judah, do you think that that's a possibility? He inclined the hearts of all the men of Judah as one man. So Amasa may have been the unifying factor there.
Otherwise, they wouldn't send a word to David.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Because he had a lot of influence.
That's right. And so Amasa is the one who sort of, that was a sweet political move of David, and so Amasa sort of smooths everything over, and so the elders in Judah then will send the message back and say, hey, we really want you to come back now, and rule and reign over us, you and all of your servants. And so in verse 15, the king returned, and he came to the Jordan. And Judah came to Gilgal to go and meet the king, to escort the king across the Jordan. Okay, a traditional thing that they would have done when someone returns from a victorious army. It was not unusual for the people to go out and escort them at least the first leg of the journey. Honor, probably playing musical instruments, singing, dancing, grateful for the victory. What do you know about Gilgal? What do you remember about Gilgal? Sound familiar to you? It's where Saul was from.
Oh, yeah.
Saul was from there too, and so it's an important part of the story. So they go and meet the king to escort the king across the Jordan. Now, here's a guy we met before, Shimei, the son of Gera, a Benjamite. So not from Judah. He's from Saul's and Jonathan's tribe, right? A Benjamite who was from Bahurim, hurried and came down with the men of Judah to meet King David. So he comes and joins up with them. Remember him? Do you remember what he did?
He's the one that told them who the little crippled boy was down.
No.
He threw rocks.
He's the guy who threw the rocks.
Oh, that's right.
Remember? He's the guy who stood on the bank and pelted the king and all of his people and all of that and said, it's because of you that Saul's house, you rogue, get out. It's because of you that Saul's house has been destroyed. And remember King David's response? He said, hey, maybe I deserve this.
Yeah.
Don't stop him. Maybe the Lord has sent him down here to say these words to me. Maybe I deserve it. Maybe I'm just that bad of a fellow. And so this is that same guy. So he hurries down, sort of intermingles in with Judah, but he couldn't do that because verse 17, there were 1,000 men of Benjamin with him. He brings reinforcement, right? These are his people, his tribe. And Ziba, now that mom is the one you were talking about, the servant of the house of Saul, and his 15 sons and his 20 servants with him, and they went over the Jordan before the king. All right, so all of these are Benjamites. Ziba, they all come from Saul's people. Mephibosheth, all of those, they're all Benjamites. And so they've all come together now, and they are going over before the king. And then a ferry boat went across to carry over the king's household and do what he thought good. Now, Shimei, the son of Gera, fell down before the king when he had crossed the Jordan, and he said to the king, do not let my lord impute iniquity to me or remember what wrong your servant did on that day that my lord the king left Jerusalem, that the king should take it to heart. I didn't really mean it. I'm sorry. Don't even think about it. Let's not even talk about it anymore. That Let's pretend it didn't happen. Let's just not think about it. For I, your servant, know that I have sinned. Therefore, here I am, the first come today of all the house of Joseph to go down to meet my Lord, the king. See, now I really like you a lot. I'm really sorry about that because I really like you. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, answered and said, shall not Shimei be put to death for this? Because he cursed the Lord's anointed. If you remember correctly, they were wanting to kill him back when he did the deed. And David stopped him. And for the same reason. And so once again, he brings that out. And David said, it's kind of a bitter response. He says, what have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah, that you should be adversaries to me today? Now, when he says you sons of Zeruiah, is he just talking to Abishai?
No.
Who's the other one?
Joab.
Joab also. So once again, we have an indication that he knows what's going on, right? He knows the problem, because don't you feel some bitterness in this statement?
Yes.
Yeah. What have I to do with you? In other words, this is a terrible idea. Why would you even say this to me? Why would you bring this up? Well, actually, on Abishai's behalf, it's not a terrible idea. Shimei did a really bad thing, and by law could very well have been punished, and if it was hardcore, he would have been, way back when he did it. But now, David is saying, what have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah?
But why would David say Zeruiah was his sister, right?
Right.
So why would he use that kind of you sons of Zeruiah?
Oh, well, they're called sons of Zeruiah many times in this.
Oh,
It's
so
their
just the way
identification.
they
Yeah.
identified him.
Yeah.
But
So
it wasn't like a curse to
oh no.
Okay.
No, it's just the way they were identified.
Okay.
He says, shall any man be put to death today in Israel? For do I not know that today I am the king over Israel? All right, so it sounds like he's not only yelling at them, but he's saying, today's my day. It's a day to make peace, not adversarial. Let's not even talk about this. Therefore the king said to Shimei, you shall not die. And the king swore to him. All right, now, remember when I jumped the gun and I gave you that background information, we know that this is not the end of the story, although it's the end of our story. It's not the end of the story. Remember what happens? Solomon, on his deathbed, David tells Solomon, this guy, Shimei, needs to be gone. You need to get rid of him. So the bitterness is at bay here for the moment, but is that forgiveness?
No.
It's not.
Actually, though, this Shimei doesn't have loyalty, and he knows that if he did this to me, he's going to do this to my son. So he doesn't want him to trust him because he's not going to be loyal.
Okay. All right. And if he knew that, which I agree with you, I think that's a good point. If he knew that, why let him get off scot-free twice now?
Because he's got people who are on his side. He wants a whole new close.
Okay. So he doesn't want to stir up any trouble. He doesn't want any
Got enough
adversarial
of that.
reaction.
He's not-
Army.
he doesn't-
He's a
One
Benjamite.
against him. Where do you stop if you start with this one?
Yeah. Right now, everybody's his enemy. He's trying to make peace and draw everyone back in. He can't, at this point, afford to alienate anybody.
Do you think there's a possibility that just like with Absalom, where he did not decide to do the just thing, the righteous thing with Absalom, do you think there's a possibility that David struggles with that and goes the easy route?
You know, it's really hard because God does that with us. I mean, who doesn't he forgive? And who doesn't he continue to be good to, even though they're rotten to him?
Absolutely.
So,
However, that last little part we talk about where he tells Solomon to kill him, we don't get that.
That doesn't seem right.
That forgiveness with God, he says what? It's cast
but
as far as
this
the
is a
east is
different
from the west.
time.
It is. I'm not arguing for or against. I'm just trying to put it out there. You're right. It is a different time, and it is a
He needs to make peace.
He
and settle
needs-
things down.
he needs to make peace. And so once again, someone who, just as with Amnon, should have been punished and isn't, as with Absalom, should have been punished but isn't. Now we see Shimei should have been punished but isn't. I'm just throwing it out there.
And
There's
then
a-
make his son an executioner for what he should have done.
He what now?
He makes Solomon an executioner,
Oh.
which is putting quite a burden on your son who wasn't.
Well, Solomon does it correctly. Solomon, it doesn't execute him. Solomon just sort of ostracizes him. Shimei brings it on himself, his own death, by leaving Jerusalem when Solomon tells him not to. And you can go back in your chapter and look and see where I included that in there. I'm just throwing it out there. There's a lot going on in the underskirts of this, you know, and right or wrong or how that's going on. It's just interesting to recognize that while God's plans and purposes are not going to be thwarted, mankind has a tendency to get in there and sort of, you know, stir it all up a little bit and get it all going in different directions.
He has already won the war.
Yes.
And it cost him his son Absalom.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking at the cost that's already been paid, that he is feeling merciful.
He is. He definitely is extending mercy to him, isn't he? All right, let's look at the next phase. So Mephibosheth, the son of Saul, he was the grandson of Saul, but that's a way that it's always, you know, it's oftentimes said, came down to meet the king. And he had not cared for his feet, nor trimmed his mustache, nor washed his clothes from the day the king departed into the day he returned in peace. Now, why do you think that little detail's in there?
Like he's mourning.
Yeah.
It's a sense of mourning when you don't put oil on and you don't clean yourself and you don't clean your dirty feet and you don't oil them, because in that day it would have been you would have needed to have kept your feet in really good shape because of all the walking and sometimes not even with anything on your feet. And so he didn't trim his mustache, so he doesn't care about his vanity. That's an indicator in this culture that all of his thoughts and attention are with the king, nothing on himself. It's one of the reasons why when Jewish people sit Shiva today, you know, they have the tradition of covering all of their mirrors with black cloths. One of the reasons behind that, there are several, but one of them is you don't have time to check yourself out in the mirror and comb your hair and put on makeup and do all of that sort of thing because you're mourning. All of your thoughts are on that. And so it has that connotation of he didn't spend any time on himself. It was all on what was going on with the king. Now, do you remember the story of what happened with Ziba and Mephibosheth? Because this is going to be important. Look at verse 25. So it was when he came to Jerusalem to meet the king that the king said to him, "Why did you not go with me, Mephibosheth?" Okay, so you sit at my table. That was what you got. You eat with me. You are as like one of my own family. Why did you not go with us?
To battle? Or
No, to leave, to flee. When they flee out of Jerusalem, why did you not go? So let's review the story. Do you remember when Ziba meets King David when they're fleeing, and King David goes, "Where's Mephibosheth?" And what does Ziba say? Ziba says, he said, "I'm staying in Jerusalem because I think that when David and Absalom fight, they'll die and then I get the kingdom." Remember? And David said, "Well, then if that's the way he feels," again paraphrasing, "if that's the way he feels, then you get all of the property that I gave to Mephibosheth," which was actually Saul or Jonathan and property from Saul to Jonathan to Mephibosheth. You get all of that because Mephibosheth has turned against me. That's what David's thinking. All right, so he says to him, "Why did you not go with me?" 26, and he answered, "Oh, my lord, O king, my servant deceived me." Who was the servant? Ziba. Right. "For your servant said, I will saddle a donkey for myself, that I may ride on it and go to the king, because your servant is lame. So I was getting ready to get the donkey, because obviously I can't walk. I'm lame, so I was getting all of that ready. And he has slandered your servant to my lord the king, but my lord the king is like the angel of God. Therefore do what is good in your eyes. So, did David tell him what Ziba had said, and it's just not recorded here? Did Mephibosheth hear about it later when he heard that all the property was given to Ziba? Did Ziba come back and say, hey, get off my property, you bum? King David gave all this to me. We're not really, those details are not filled in here. But somehow he knows that Ziba lied to King David and told him that he was in Jerusalem waiting to for them to die so that he could take the kingdom. So he doesn't really give all of the details other than to say, I tried to go, but I couldn't, and the servant deceived me. But now he says, do what is good in your own eyes. So what is he doing? He's throwing himself at the mercy of David, and he's saying, you know best. But I'm innocent, but I will accept whatever it is that you have because you know best. So what does that tell us about the heart of Mephibosheth? He does have a good heart, doesn't he? And is he grateful for what David has done for him?
Very.
He is. Was he mourning when David was forced to flee? Yes. And so he has David in the best light possible. That tells us that everything Ziba said was a lie when Ziba said it for whatever purposes, and probably to get more physical belongings for himself. But Mephibosheth is not doing anything other than throwing himself on the mercy of David. He says in 28, for all of my father's house were but dead men before my lord the king. In other words, you had the right to kill all of them because of the way that they treated you. Everyone in my family, including myself, should have been dead when you became king. That's what we deserved. Yet you set your servant among those who eat at your own table. Therefore, what right have I still to cry out any more to the king? This is oftentimes used as an example of what we deserve and what we receive, because we are also dead men because of our sin, and it is only because of God's mercy through the blood of Jesus Christ that we sit at the table as a son, rather than are murdered for what it is that we've done. And so this is used as a perfect example to that. And so what right have I to cry out for any more? This was tied in when I was doing my study on Job, is that when God gives you salvation, when you belong to him, what right have you to cry out for any more? So the idea was the whole prosperity thing is awfully silly. Anything we receive after our salvation is a blessing that we should be totally grateful for, but we don't expect more because we are a son and a daughter of the king. What else can you expect?
Diana.
Yeah.
Be enough.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So the king said to him, why do you speak any more of these matters? I have said, you and Ziba divide the land. Okay. So he's telling Mephibosheth, I don't even want to talk about this anymore. Now I want you and Ziba to divide the land up. So what did he said earlier to Ziba? You get every. Wait. Let me back it up even more. What did he tell Mephibosheth when Mephibosheth came?
It was all Mephibosheth.
It's all Mephibosheth. Ziba's going to help him work the land. Then he gets mad and he gives it all to Ziba, right? Now he says, divide it between the two of you. What do you think about that? What does that tell you about David at this moment?
Wishy-washy.
It's kind of, I don't want to talk about this with you anymore. I don't know whether Ziba's lying. I don't know whether you're lying. I can't discuss this. I don't want to hear about it. I'm just going to divide it up equally amongst you. Is that correct? Maybe for the moment, because of kind of what Randy was saying earlier, for the political maneuvering and all. Is it just?
No.
Do you see a little pattern occurring in a lot of these decisions of let's do what's expedient for the moment, but is it just?
He's looking a lot like a politician.
Mm.
And Absalom could point out that flaw over and over because he probably did this all the time.
It is a very worrisome quality that we see on the glass half full standard. We can say it's another example of how God takes very flawed people and uses them for his plans and purposes. And David is known as one of the greatest kings of Israel. So there are redeeming factors to this, but when we put David on that pedestal and on that throne, we remember that he was a man, flawed, sinful. We're seeing that over and over and over again, and yet God continues to use him. So there's that, that kind of, wow, there's none that falls too low that God can't use. But we do see some negative things that maybe we'd rather not have to see.
But he had a repentant heart.
He did,
Yes, he did.
which is hugely important.
I think that's why God called him a man after his own heart.
So what does that say about us? Boy, when we sin, first thing we need to do, be quick to forgive and to cry out for repentance and all of those things. We need to be quick to do that.
The other part that popped in my mind is it's not our works or what we do that's considered righteous to God. It's our trust in him.
Yes, absolutely.
Everything else is nailed to the cross.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And David certainly trusted God.
Yes, he did. So verse 30, then Mephibosheth said to the king, rather let him take it all, inasmuch as my lord the king has come back in peace to his own home. So Mephibosheth says, I don't care what you do. Give it all to him. It doesn't matter to me. You're home, David. And that's what I care.
Real love for David.
It does show a beautiful heart of Mephibosheth. So now David's kind of in a good mood, I guess. And so Barzillai, how do you say that, Jane? How would you say that?
You always divide the syllable on the double L, so Barzillai.
Barzillai. The Gileadite came down from Rogelim and went across to the Jordan with a king to escort him across the Jordan. Now, Barzillai was a very aged man. He was 80 years old. And he had provided the king with supplies while he stayed at Mahanaim, for he was a very rich man. We read about that earlier in chapter 17. He was one of the 3 men who brought all those supplies. Do you remember the picture on your page of the peas and the corn and the beans and all the things that he brought? That was on your page. He was one of those guys who brings the supplies while David is fleeing. So he sustains David in his greatest time of need during that period. And so the king says to Barzillai, come across with me, and I will provide for you while you are with me in Jerusalem. So David wants to bless him for what it is that he has done. But Barzillai said to the king, how long have I to live that I should go up with the king to Jerusalem? Another example of it's always up to Jerusalem. Always up. You never hear anyone ever in the Bible talk about going down. Israel is always up to Jerusalem. And he says, I don't think that I'm going to go with you. I am today 80 years old. Hey, it was his birthday. Yay! Can I discern between the good and the bad? Can your servant taste what I eat or what I drink? Can I hear any longer the voice of singing men and singing women? Why then should your servant be a further burden to my lord the king? So he, at 80, he wasn't in great health, I guess. It appears to me. Couldn't hear, doesn't eat, can't taste, doesn't really have much joy in life at 80. And he says, I'm just going to be a burden to you. It says, sorry. 36, your servant will go a little way across the Jordan with the king. And why should the king repay me with such a reward? And so he goes, I'll go just a little ways, but please let your servant turn back again, that I may die in my own city, near the grave of my father and mother. But here is your servant, Himham. There's no, the C doesn't have any. Himham, let him cross over with my lord the king, and do for him what seems good to you. Most biblical scholars believe that this is his son. And so Himham, he's saying, take him instead and the reward and the honor that you would have given me, can you give it to him?" And the king answered, "Him shall cross over with me, and I will do for him what seems good for you. Now whatever you request of me, I will do for you." Then all of the people went over the Jordan, and when the king had crossed over, the king kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned to his own place. All right, so David has kind of taken care of the people who helped him and settled up the score with Ziba and settled up with Mephibosheth. And so, Shimei's going to live, and all the loose ends of our stories are sort of tied up with this. Now there's some more trouble going to happen in verse 40. Now the king went on to Gilgal, and Him went on with him. And all of the people of Judah, you're going to need to keep these names straight here or you're going to get confused, escorted the king, and also half of the people of Israel. So half of the people of Israel would be...
The other 10 tribes.
Okay, so half of them, but it appears as though the tribe of Judah has the lead position in this. What are they doing? They're claiming David back again as their king. They're escorting him across, as was tradition, showing that they are affirming him, supporting him, believing in what it is that David is going to do. Just then, all the men of Israel, so that's the rest of the 10 tribes, came to the king and said to the king, "Why have our brethren, the men of Judah, stolen you away and brought the king and his household and all of David's men with him across the Jordan? What is going on? Why are they in the lead? Why are they taking over this whole thing of bringing you back?" Wow, what does that tell us?
Jealous.
Whoa! I mean, so oftentimes you see people respond and you go, how could they respond that way? But you know what? We would have too, had we been part of that, because it is human nature to say, yeah, we messed up before, well, that little thing when we went with Absalom and all that, and we're going to kill you. We messed up, but now we really like you again, and we want you to know we are for you. We support you, David. We'd like to be first in line to help you across the Jordan. I mean, it is human nature to be that way. And so they've gone after the people of Judah for leading this whole procession across. So in 42, all the men of Judah answered the men of Israel and said, "Well, we did this because the king is a close relative of ours. Why then are you angry over this matter? Have we ever eaten at the king's expense? Or has he given us any gifts? In other words, have we gotten anything you haven't gotten? We're not being paid for doing this. We're doing this because he is from our tribe. We're the lead because he's from Judah. We deserve this. It's our honor to do this." And the men of Israel answered the men of Judah and said, "Hey, we have 10 shares in the king." Why would they say that? Because there are 10 tribes. You got 1. You know what? You got 1. We got 10 shares in the tribe. And we have more right to David than you. Because there are 10. It's 10-1. We want to lead.
And you go in the back.
And you go back there. Why then do you despise us? Were we not the first to advise bringing back our king? Did we not come to you, Judah, and say, remember back earlier, went to the tribes, the elders in Judah, and said, hey, don't you think we should bring David back? They're throwing that up. They're saying, are we not the ones that had the whole idea to bring David back? It was our idea. We have 10 shares. You guys are just hogging all the glory. Ooh, hate you. And it says, yet the words of the men of Judah were fiercer than the words of the men of Israel. So that word fiercer there is talking about they were more violent. They were louder. They were more aggressive. So the people from Judah stood their ground a little bit more firmly than the people of Israel did. Okay? So, yep. There we go. We're a little early. Too bad, because I have 20 already.
Have a good week.
Yeah, I'll have a little bit easier week getting our packets ready, huh? All right, does anyone have any questions or comments about this one? How does it make you feel about David? You can turn that off if you want. How does it make you feel about David at this point?
I just feel like